Welcome, everybody. It's Larry Johnson, your host for Eight Principles Voices. And we have another person who does things today. And we're going to find out a lot about him and sort of what he does and why he does what he does. His name is Adam Packard, and he comes to us from the not too hot place called Phoenix, and we are in July here when we're doing this. And he has got an interesting program. He's founder of his own company, I guess you could call it, and it's called Ninja Prospecting. Now, there's an interesting name for you, um, and we're going to let him tell us where that comes from and what it is. But welcome, Adam.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So before we get into what your company does, and I'm a little disappointed that you don't have a ninja costume on, actually. Okay, see that would have been perfect, you know. But anyway, tell us a little bit about you, meaning, maybe, what your interests are, where you grew up, but it kind of moving into, how you came to do what you're doing. Because if you're the founder of a company, you had to have the idea, all right, and you had to be
Right.
able to execute on that idea. And that's a certain skill set. So we'll get into that in a second. But give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Yeah, I grew up in Maine, came from a small town and kind of migrated west. I was a golfer by trade, and so trying to find the warmer weather. I initially went to school to be a golf pro, actually. That was my first career, was I was a teaching pro and worked at courses and I did that for a few years. Kind of migrated west to Denver and then south to Phoenix. But I quickly realized that as a golf pro, it sounds like a cool job, but you work long hours, you don't get paid very much, and you never get to play any golf. And so I had the opportunity. It was a great, it was fun to do when you're in your early 20s. So I had a good time with it. But I actually had an opportunity to move to Phoenix. My parents had retired out here. My brother was working for a motivational speaker at the time and invited me to, come work with him and basically travel on the road. So my brother and I had traveled and set up seminars and kept the speaker happy and did that for about 5 years. And what a cool job. I mean, I didn't have any office hours. I would literally just hop on a plane, do the seminar, come back and hang out at home. So it kind of it gave me the opportunity to do a side business, right? Because I had all this free time when we weren't traveling. And so we actually were a part of a network marketing business in our mid 20s. So we did really, really well with that company. My dad's always been an entrepreneur. He had his own business. And so I think he kind of instilled that, work for yourself kind of mindset. And so we did that business for a little while. Got a little bit burned out and was looking for what else can I do. I call it the dark side. I went to work for a corporation and had a job for about 4 years. And, it was a stepping stone. I enjoyed it, but, never really saw myself being a full-time corporate person. I always enjoyed working for myself.
Mhm.
And randomly, I got laid off. They had about a 25% reduction in employees 1 year. And I was one of the newer guys. And so I got let go and left me thinking, what am I going to do? I had a new house, new son, like perfect storm of everything coming together. And at the time, I had a friend of mine that I'd worked with in the past in the golf business, and he reached out and he said, "Hey, I know you're looking for something." He's like, "I can't pay you, what you were making before, so you can do whatever you want on the side, but can you help me generate some leads for this new startup that I have?" I've always been in networking and sales, and I said, let me try to figure it out. And so I did a little bit of research. He was trying to sell advertising. It was, if you ever go play golf, you have those GPS devices on the golf carts where it show you the hole. And he was selling advertising on those devices. And so I literally went to Google and I typed in how to sell advertising and looked up, okay, who's my buyer? Who do I need to get in front of? How do I find this guy leads? And I realized the only place I could find him was on LinkedIn. And I'd always had a LinkedIn account, never really done anything with it. So I logged in for the first time in about 10 years and trial and error, figured out what works, what doesn't, just to start conversations with strangers. And we landed some national clients. He was happy. And my wife was actually the one that encouraged me. She said, "You're good at this. You should do this for other people." And so I started to kind of, reach out to some friends and business owners that I knew and said, "Hey, this is something new I'm doing. If you need any help, let me know." And that's kind of how it started. It's, name changed multiple times over the years. I'll tell you how we kind of came up with the ninja stuff. But yeah, I started this about 7 years ago, and it's evolved quite a bit. But it was a combination of getting let go, figuring out what my next move was, my wife's encouragement to, hey, this is your thing, you need to build this, and then from there, it's kind of how it started.
Well, I want to go back to something you said. I like conversations with strangers. All right. Um, you and I must share that because my wife's always saying, if we're in an airport or whatever, you just start talking to anybody you meet. Well, yeah,
Right.
I do. And 9 times out of 10, it's a pleasant conversation. And
Yep.
you ask something about them and where they're going or whatever, and one thing leads to the next. And of course, children are a great lubricator, especially if they're cute. Oh, aren't you a sweetheart? And so the kids. And then you said something else that I think you made a little light of. I'd like to delve in more. When you were doing the event and webinar execution for the speaker, that's not just simply showing up and going home. There's a lot of logistical effort that goes with that if it's going to come off well. All right. Because
Right.
I've done some of that and I know, well, and I've had people help me. And, among those things, of course, is dealing with hotels and AV people and caterers and all the above. And
And unions and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And there's always something that's going to go wrong no matter what, you know. And so, in addition to someone that has the ability to plan and look at things in a sequence, you also must have the ability to think on your feet. Because I can't think of an event I've ever been a part of that didn't have some last minute issue that had to be resolved. All right.
Mhm.
You can either resolve it well and things go well, or it's not resolved well and the guest looks like a fool. And you don't want the latter piece. All right. So you must have had that skill early on.
I've always been very detail oriented. I'm always the one that kind of makes the lists and the plan and very structured. So I'm a blueprint personality by trade. So like lists and structure, and that's always been kind of in my DNA. Whereas my brother's the complete opposite, right? He'll fire before he aims. And I'm more of the let me kind of figure out the right process. So I've always kind of had that. I think that's helped me quite a bit, when it comes to business as well, is like, okay, here are the key things I need to do. Right. Here's the most important income producing activities, and then kind of build everything else from there. But yeah, it was a lot of, like you said, something always goes wrong. So you have to think on your feet and be prepared. And I remember one time we did a seminar in Boston, and it was 500 people sitting in the room. And I call up to Tom, the speaker, and I say, "All right, Tom, they're all ready for you. Come on down. We got everything set up." Um, and he wasn't there. He never got on the flight from Phoenix to Boston. So that was a think on your feet. What do we do? How do we tell everybody in the audience that he's not here and we're gonna have to reschedule? But yeah, I got lots of stories like that definitely keeps you on your toes.
Well, you're obviously still living, so the audience must not have been enraged. What do you mean?
Yeah, yeah, it was an interesting conversation for sure.
Hmm. I imagine you gave a lot of refunds out that day. Is that what happened?
Yes, they did that, but they also we rescheduled for the week following. So we did the best we could with the situation that we had.
Yeah. Oh, so, uh, so let's go down to your current business, which you're in the business of helping another organization develop sales leads, correct? All right.
Yes, it's evolved quite a bit, but yes,
So that your business is primarily geared toward the for-profit industry.
correct.
Do
Yeah,
you ever work with any nonprofits?
yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about one of those experiences. And you can always not mention the names to protect the guilty.
Yeah, there was an organization in Canada that we worked with that did like some type of workplace awards, right? So it was more of it wasn't a typical customer that we usually work with, but at the end of the day, they're trying to get in front of people that, obviously could benefit from having this workplace award. So our plan there was to kind of reverse engineer who are we trying to get in front of, and what's the stickiness of the message to kind of get their attention and kind of draw them in and get them to say, yeah, tell me more. I want to showcase my company. And at the end of the day, yes, we're trying to produce sales leads for mostly profit companies, but it all comes from building relationships, right? LinkedIn's changed so much over the years. A few years ago, you could, spam 100, 150 people a day with a message, and not be very good at reaching out to people and starting conversations. They've since, removed and kind of restricted how many people you can reach out to. So you've got to think outside the box. And then you look at your inbox, whether it's email or LinkedIn, and you have so many messages from people just trying to pitch and sell you. And so our approach has evolved over the years where we focus more on how do you take someone from a stranger to a relationship to a client. Most people just bypass that middle part and go right for the sale. And when you do that, you're just relying on the timing to be perfect. Our approach is, hey, if the timing is not great, we still want to approach someone the right way, where if there's not a need today, you keep the door open for a future conversation. And that's working really well, because I think people are, missing that human element, that build a relationship, like add value. How can I help someone, before I ask them for something? I can't ask you to marry me on the first date, right? I have to court you a little bit. I have to, have a couple conversations first before you become a client. And so that's really kind of how our business has evolved, is looking at what's working, what worked in the past is not working today, and how do we kind of stay current with trends and make sure that we're getting people the result. But whether it's a for-profit, nonprofit, at the end of the day, you're trying to get your message and your offer in front of the right audience, and that's what we're really good at.
Well, and for a nonprofit, they're looking for primarily people who are going to, I say, invest. The world would say make charitable gifts. And of course,
Yeah.
that requires knowing sort of what the profile of the person is that you're looking for. And
Mhm.
began to, so you spend a lot of time on the phone, uh,
Mostly Zoom.
mostly, well, Zoom now, because we've moved.
Yeah. And not, yeah, I rarely, I can probably count on one hand how many clients I've met face to face. 99% of my interactions are just through Zoom.
So then your job is to reach out to them, and you make it clear to them, I presume, that you are not an employee, but you're an agent, or I mean, what's the relationship? How do you start that?
No, we do everything through the client's account. So they own all the conversations and all the leads. Yeah. So we don't act as kind of an outside firm that's trying to get into a company. We want to leverage, your background and expertise and credibility. So you kind of own the account and own all the leads that we generate.
So then, are you making all the calls? Do the client make the calls? Do you train people? How does that work?
No, we're really just in the getting the conversation started business, right? So we reach out. My goal, like when I reach out to you on LinkedIn, is simply to engage and have a conversation to see, hey, if there's any synergy or if I can help you in any way. Once we've generated that interest and someone says, yeah, to be open for a conversation, we don't come in and do the calls for you. We don't respond as you and try to move them to your calendar. We simply get the conversation started and hand it off. It's almost like if you've ever been to a networking event, you know, you with LinkedIn, it's almost like you have 20 to 30 networking events that you go to, but we kind of go on your behalf. We shake everybody's hands, and when they raise their hand and say, I'm interested, we hand them off to you. So it just leverages your time so you can have more conversations.
So then, if let's say that I was someone you'd identified, and we were having just a Zoom call, and you were trying to get to know me, and we were exchanging, and then you'd say something like, "Well, have you ever heard of XYZ organization?" And I might say yes, no, or maybe, and then you would tell me a little bit about it, and then you would say, "Would you like to learn more?" Is that the process?
Not really. So imagine I'm in your LinkedIn account. I'm acting as you. I help you kind of craft the strategy and the approach, obviously define who the person is that you want to get in front of. So we kind of get very clear on who's the audience that you want to have these conversations with, identifying your avatar, if you will, and then kind of crafting what's the right approach, because every audience is different and requires a slightly different approach. So we kind of help you craft what is that outbound? How do I get a conversation started with my ideal client. So
Mhm.
we craft that kind of copywriting, if you will, and then execute it for you. And then once somebody replies, they're replying directly to you, right? So they're saying, "Hey, Larry, would love to have a chat. Tell me more." At that point, you then step in and take over the conversation. So we're basically just kind of doing that initial legwork to get the conversation started for you, and then kind of acting as you. But obviously, everything we do is approved by clients and make sure it feels on brand and on point and right style and tone and approach. Because what we do, we want to elevate someone's brand and company. We don't want to just come in and say this is the only way to do it. So everything we do is custom. There's no cookie cutter process. But once we've generated the person that says, "Yeah, tell me more, I'm interested," that's where you kind of take over the conversation.
Okay. All right. So my market for in my business is pretty clear. It's nonprofit organizations because help
Hmm.
I help them or guide them and teach them and produce documents for them that enable them to create and sustain a sustainable fundraising program. That's what I do.
Hmm. Yep.
Then the point of contact is generally the CEO, at least in the beginning, because
Hmm.
they write the checks, they make the decisions. And I have a lot of experience in fundraising, and I can tell you that one of the things that frustrates fundraisers is that they can't make those decisions. They have to go to their executive. Well, I want to use this or that. Well, okay, then have them talk to me. So that's why we go directly to the CEOs. It's not because we don't
Hmm.
like the fundraisers. It's just that they're not involved early on. So then
Hmm.
you would do that function for me. You would identify the CEOs, reach out and say, this is what Larry does. Would you like to get to know him? Any interest? And then they'd say yes, no, or maybe. And then you'd say, well, I'll set up a call.
Yeah. Well, it's Larry reaching out too. So it's not, we're not saying this is what Larry does. So
Ah,
if I'm you, I'm sending a message to a CEO of a nonprofit, and
okay.
I'm reaching out saying, "Hey, I might have a few ideas for you around XYZ. If you're looking to create more of a sustainable plan, let's have a quick chat." Or it could be a different approach. Or you could send them more info because a lot of time you want to make it easy for people to say yes, right? We get requests for time on our calendar all the time. And sometimes, especially when you're reaching out to a CEO, they're very busy. We know that. Requesting time on their calendar from someone that doesn't know you is not always the best approach. So we might say, on behalf of, let's say I'm acting as you, and the potential client is Brian. "Hey, Brian, would love to connect and hear a little bit more about the work you guys are doing. My expertise lies in helping companies like yours create more of a sustainable plan. If you'd like to, kind of see what makes my process and approach unique, I'm happy to share a little bit more info, short video, something like that, where it's easy for them to say, yeah, I'll take a look, because you're not asking for time on their calendar yet. Sometimes you can go direct to their calendar, but a lot of times when you're targeting those higher level people, you need to take a little bit more of a softer approach, which allows them to kind of kick the tires and learn more to see if having a call makes sense. And that's kind of what we come up with is, depending on the audience that you're trying to get in front of, what's the best plan and strategy to do that where it feels good to you, right? This feels authentic and like we're acting on your behalf, but also generates the right conversations with the right people.
All right. Um, so then, okay. So how do you, I mean, are there search engines or the things you use to identify the prospect in the beginning? Or does the,
Yeah, so mainly Sales Navigator,
oh,
which is LinkedIn's premium tool. So if we don't use Sales Navigator, then we're using some list building tools like a Zoom Info or Apollo.io. There's tons of list building services, but I would say probably 95% of our clients we can identify just through Sales Navigator, because they give you enough parameters to really hone in on size of company and correct what their current role is, how long they've been there, what industry they're in, all those different parameters. You can find them right through LinkedIn.
so then you're reaching out as me, is what you're doing.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Now I'm
Yep.
understanding. It took,
Yep.
I'm going to
Yeah.
slap. All right. All right. Well, this is,
Yeah, because most people don't have 3 hours a day to spend on LinkedIn sending out, messages to strangers. And a lot of people kind of have that icky feeling like, oh, I don't want to spam people. What we do is not spam. All we're trying to do is network and have a conversation. Obviously, it's directed to the ideal client. If they have a need, then you start that conversation. But it's all in the approach. Everything do is permission based, right? So I'm anti sending links in messages because it assumes you need help. So if I reached out to you cold on LinkedIn and said, "Hey Larry, I can fill your calendar with lots of appointments. Here's my link to book a strategy call." I'm assuming that number one, that you are looking for help. And I'm also assuming that I can help you. I don't know if I can help you until we have a conversation. So instead of, forcing it down your throat and saying, let's have a call, I might say, hey, Larry, if you're ever looking for some more creative ways to have conversations with your ideal clients, we've got a unique approach that focuses more on building relationships first. If that resonates, let me know and I'll shoot over a quick 3-minute video that, shows you, how we're different in our process. And you send me back a message saying, sounds great. Tell me more.
I like that. I get a lot of emails from people, principally from lead generators like yourself, from app developers, outside service providers, and they're getting my name and emails from someplace, obviously, and they right away launch into all they do and how wonderful they are, and can I have some time? Can I have some time on your calendar?
Yep.
It's always the ask, can I have some time on your calendar? And so that rarely works with me.
Exactly. Right. And there are a lot of ways that you're making it about you, right? If all you're doing is talking about you, the other person on the other end is thinking, I don't care about all your credentials. I want to know how you can help me and if you can help me.
Well,
So
and
you
the
have to
other
get them talking. It's not.
the other semi sleazy thing is when they give you some sort of overly done platitude about how wonderful you are in the first sentence or two. I've just looked at your website and I can see that you're blah 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 blah. I'm going, oh please, just
Yeah.
me,
You didn't look at my website. Yeah. Or I get the one a lot that says, I really enjoyed your last post. And I'm coming back like, I don't post that often. Which post are you talking about? Or your profile and your background are impressive, right? I get that one every once in a while. And I'm like, you didn't even look at my profile or background. Otherwise, you wouldn't reach out. So it has to be authentic, right? We're not trying to, you know, you know, just try to sell someone in this message here. You have to be authentic with the approach. And if it sounds canned, it usually
it
is
is.
canned.
It is. So then tell me a little bit about sort of where the business is going. You strike me as someone who isn't just sort of riding the center of the market with a name like Ninja. Come on. So
That's it. Yeah. No, it's evolved a lot over the last 7 years. Ninja is, hey, we're kind of stealthy and we kind of have a different way of doing things, and but we're kind of behind the scenes. But we're really good at the outbound strategy on LinkedIn, right? Identifying your ideal client, coming up with the right strategy, creating copy that generates the conversations. But what I'm finding and kind of how we're evolving, we're actually putting together a whole new program um, that focuses on combining both outbound and inbound strategies. So how do you create content on LinkedIn and other platforms to become a thought leader, to share insights, to build a following? Because if you can have both of those components working at the same time, it makes the outbound approach easier. And you start to build a following and start to generate conversations just from sharing content. So we're kind of moving more into that space where we're combining multiple things together and bringing on experts that are very good at those areas.
I was just thinking about that. Your work in the nonprofit space would be most useful for an organization which has what's known as an open constituency. And what I mean by that is you're not a church or a membership organization, which pretty much isolates the people that are going to support you to the members of that organization. If you're in higher ed, your constituency is pretty well defined. It's alumni and parents. In terms of fundraising. And so that's where you are. A lot of social service organizations, all they have is interest. Do you have an interest in what we do? So I can see where your service could be quite useful if you're really just trying to prospect for people who have that interest or fit some other kind of parameters that you're looking for, because wouldn't they would probably not have any prior relationship with the organization in any way.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I mean, what we do is really focused on getting in front of people that you don't know currently. We want to grow and expand your circle. You might have, 1,000 connections on LinkedIn. You can have 30,000 connections. I've grown my following from, 1,000 to 27,000 over the last 6 years. And it allows me to, when I share something, more and more people are seeing it. I have a lot more people in my network now. And so that's what we're trying to help people do is expand your brand, expand your circle of influence, and then coming up with a plan on how do you communicate with those people to kind of move them from just being a connection to having a conversation.
Okay. All right. So, all right. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Um, 5 years time, where do you want to be?
Um, as of right now, I love what I do, but I am working on building out my team so I am less in the business and more on the business. Adding different layers where we're helping people in multiple areas, whether it's LinkedIn or other platforms. So in 5 years, we're actually working on a plan right now where we're rolling out a new program that's going to have all the different components that I just can't fulfill on my own. So bringing in different team members, a sales trainer to help people convert to conversations, right? It's great to have conversations, but if they don't become clients, what's the point? The content piece obviously is a big part of it. We do a lot of work with mindset too, because if you don't have the right mindset and energy to kind of break through and achieve new levels of success, you're going to be stuck at the same level. So in 5 years, the goal is to have a business that um, obviously does great in terms of helping clients get results, but also take myself out of the day to day of the business and find people that can probably do things better than I can, that I can leverage their time and expertise and actually grow a business versus just being the fulfillment guy. Because right now I'm very in the business. I'm very hands on, which I enjoy, but it's also very time consuming. So kind of designing the business to be more of a business and less of a job, if you will.
I love it. Now, you said something I want to build on, mindset. I would think that the client having the right mindset is perhaps the most critical element. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah,
Well,
100%.
well, and the reason I say that is in my business, the fundraising business, that's very rarely given any attention. It's all about the mechanics, it's all about the skill,
Hmm.
and then it becomes very not permission based, but outward driven.
Hmm.
I tell you about my organization, Adam, and how wonderful it is and all the great work that it does. And da 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 da. And then once you are convinced or just want to get rid of me and make a gift of some kind, then the next time you hear from me will be when I'm asking for the very next gift. You,
Right.
you will have not heard anything. And
Right. Right.
you laugh, and I know why you're laughing because it just seems so completely nonsensical, because it is. However, nonprofits do that sort of thing all
Hmm.
the time. And one of the reasons why, um, well, there are two things that are driving that. First, they always feel like they're on the edge of financial desperation. Well, sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But as you know, if that's the way they're thinking, that's the way it's going to be. All right, no
Hmm.
matter how much money you got in the bank. And then the other piece of that is that they think it's all about them. They really do think they're doing such great work. And I like to say, God save me from nice people. All right. Because they need to get over themselves because it's about the investor, the donor, and their interest, and you want to draw them in. But that is a totally different mindset than what you normally see.
Hmm.
It really,
Yep.
um, so you have to deal with that too, then.
Yeah, and that's why, my business partner is a mindset coach and she is fantastic. And it's all mindset, it's all energy, right? It's how you show up. And we were talking this morning and I said, when we have, some of our coaching calls and things that we do, I said there's certain people that come on the call and you just kind of feel the energy just drain out of the room. I said imagine how they are in front of strangers or in front of clients, right? If they're that way with us, then that's what they're, emitting to the world. And then we have other clients that are great, that are, I see them on my calendar and I'm looking forward to the conversation. I have others that I'm like, this is not going to be a fun conversation, just because I know the energy that they portray. So I think that's such an overlooked part that, you can call it airy fairy, foo-foo, but it does make a huge difference, right? If I show up on a podcast and I'm not, smiling and have good energy, no one's going to listen to it. No one's going to listen to what I have to say. But if I'm excited about what I'm doing and I'm energetic and enjoying the conversation, I attract more of the right people. You attract who you are, not what you want, right? I think that's something I've learned from the past is.
Let's go back. I want you to repeat that. We attract who we are, not what we want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like Jim Rohn used to say, you know, don't wish things were easier, wish you were better. Right. I mean, he's got so many one-liners that, it's just, for things to change, you have to change. Right. I mean, there's, Wayne Dyer says, when you change the way, you look at things, the things that you look at will change. Right. So it's all, how you're perceiving things. If something bad happens, are you getting, negative and just, shoulder shrugged, or are you saying, what can I learn from this? Right. So it's such a huge area that we focus on it a little bit right now in our work that we do with clients. It's going to be a much bigger part of the work that we do moving forward. That's why I brought her on board as a partner.
I may want to talk to her at some point. Um, Perhaps open to a podcast. Of course,
Oh, she'd always be open for a podcast for sure. Yeah.
we'd bill her as part of your team, of course. But see, that's a subject that needs a lot of unpacking in the nonprofit world because
Yeah.
they rarely, if ever, think about it. Because we project who we are, not what we want. I love
Yeah. We attract who we are, not
it.
what we want. Yeah. 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 So if you're attracting a lot of needy clients, it's probably because you're needy. If you're attracting a lot of great clients, it's probably because you're great.
I like this. This is good. This is good. Well, we talk, Adam, because I definitely want to have her on for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a subject that, as I said, it's front and center of fundraising. It really is. And so, in just round terms, what percentage of the clients that come to you do you believe? Excuse me. Do you believe have real mindset problems? That's an obstacle for them. That's keeping them to get where they need to be, is they have the
I
wrong.
think I think everybody's a work in progress, right? I mean, I have mindset challenges. We all do, right? It's just, hey, are you working on it, or are you just kind of just, skating through life and just, everything affects you, every time something happens to you. I would say every one of our clients has, other than, some of our top clients that are just have that mindset of, I'm the best and I'm really good at what I do and I help people and I serve people and they just have a different energy to them. But I would say everybody struggles with it in some capacity, right? I mean, we look at current situations and what we're going through, and it affects people different ways, right? Everybody has their own stuff that they're going through,
Mhm.
right? It's just a matter of how you look at it and how you react to it.
And well, when we finish today, let's get the information because I want to invite her. This is terrific. Oh yeah, and a mindset coach. Okay,
Hmm.
all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're telling me she's a cross between Svengali and Sigmund Freud, somewhere in that.
Probably. Yeah. 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 When when I first met her, I asked her, I always ask, what do you charge for the work you do? And she told me, and my jaw kind of dropped. I was like, really? I was like, that's a lot more than any other coach I've ever talked to. And she's like, yeah, I basically said I only want to work with 4 people at one point. So she kind of designed her programs around that. She's like, I want to work with people that when I tell them the investment of what it's like to work with me, their jaw drops as well because it needs to be uncomfortable for them to grow, right? I have coaches that charge $100 an hour. They're not a great fit, for us, because you're attracting just people that are very needy. When someone invests a lot of money, they get a better result because they have more skin in the game and they take it a lot more serious. When you're not charging for what you do, you attract a lot more of those types of people. So there's so much that goes into it, in terms of charging what you're worth, but you have to have that mindset that you're worth it, right? And I've struggled with that where, I charge one thing And I had one guy I talked to, and he laughed when I told him my pricing. And he says, "You're doing a done for you service, which is the highest level of service, right? Where I'm not just sharing a training video, I'm not teaching you what to do. We're actually just doing this for you." And he says, "You're charging less for a done for you than I'm charging for a program that people have to just do themselves." And it kind of got me thinking. I was like, I'm worth a lot more. So we raised our rates, and I'm attracting better people because I believe in what we do, and when I have that belief, it attracts better people, and I can charge more.
I'm thinking several years ago, a lot of my background before I did the program I'm doing now with the curriculum was capital fundraising, running a capital campaign for a client. It's very time intensive. You're not there all the time, but you're in and out quite frequently. And, we're talking about tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars that are on the line. And I remember I did one for a health system, a hospital system out west here. And I was in the room. We were just getting started. The contract was just signed, and I was in a board meeting with these people. And one of the gentlemen on the board pointed to this one line, which I don't know what, I forgot what they called it, but it was my fee. And he says, "So what's this?" And one of the board members says, "That's him." And he says, "So how did he put it?" He said, "How come you can charge this kind of money?" Something like that. And I just said, "Well, because I'm very good at what I do." That's all it took, Adam. That was
That's
enough.
it.
I'm
Yep.
very good. And I was very good at it.
Yeah.
It was a real deal.
Yeah.
We raised on that one, we raised $36 million. All right.
Yep.
Hey, you got a bargain, And so, but it was
Right. Exactly.
what makes you worth this kind of money, And, because I'm good at what I do. And that
Hmm.
was that. And I mean, I'm not a big, I don't think real fast on my feet, Adam. And that was, I was like, what am I going to tell this guy? And it just kind of came to me. But you got to say it in a way that's not arrogant or overbearing, just kind of matter of fact. Well, I'm really good at what I do. Um,
Well, you have to have belief that you are really good at what you do, and that comes through as energy. I mean, everything's energy. So,
and
when you have that belief and know your work, then yes, you charge that much.
yeah, I know that I'm very good. Aside
You
from
could mess around with them too and be like, you know what? I know it's a little low. I'm actually increasing my rates.
I'm giving the CEO a break. I know it's a little low.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it's a lot less than you probably thought it was going to be to work with me. So, I wanted to, I really wanted to work with you guys. So I lowered my rate just a little, just to make sure, we could work together.
This guy would be so messed up if I said that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can see why you're good at what you do, Adam. I really can. You've got the right mindset. You can diagnose the issues right away. You're easy on the. You're easy to be around, whether it's this way or face to face. But it's understanding, as you said, what the client needs and what it is they can do, and then
Hmm.
put it out there, and let's just see if they respond. Um,
That's it. Yeah.
is there anything that we haven't discussed that you would like to bring up?
Um, I just, as long as people know that when you're trying to start new conversations, people sometimes shy away from reaching out to strangers. I wouldn't shy away from it. You're not going to get 100% yeses, but at the end of the day, the person that has the most conversations wins, right? I'm able to, when I have as many conversations as I have, I probably have 5 to 10 conversations a day with potential people that could work with us. And because I have that many conversations, I can focus 100% on what's best for Larry and give him some ideas, not try to hard sell you, because I've got 5 other people lined up to talk to me this afternoon. So when I have that type of posture and confidence, because I'm having more conversations, it allows me to be more selective on who I work with. It allows me to raise our prices, make sure it's a win-win, but I don't have to, I'm not attached to the outcome of Larry says, let's work together. If
Mhm.
Larry says this is not a good plan for me, hey, no problem. Keep in touch and let me know if you'd ever like to revisit. Chances are in the future it's going to be 2 or 3 times as much because we're getting better and better at this and we're adding more and more. But I don't attach to the outcome of any call. I don't go into any call with any expectation because I have a lot of conversations. And I would just encourage people, if you don't have a system or a strategy to generate more conversations, whether it's us or anybody else, start something, try something, because people are out there waiting to hear from you. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've started with people that I never would have met if it wasn't for me reaching out to them cold on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And so the opportunities that it's opened is just because I created something that allows me to do it in a way that's authentic. It feels right to me, and that comes through when I have conversations with people. So I would say just don't shy away from creating some strategies to kind of expand your network and start conversations with strangers. There are ways you can do that effectively.
Um, yes. And one way I usually try immediately to establish some sort of common ground with someone and while inquiring about what it is they do. Um,
Hmm.
and they're very usually willing to talk about that. And when I was in the direct fundraising role, and I would meet with prospects, and of course, at some point, I was meeting nothing but high net worth individuals. I'd be in their office or home. In fact, I made a point of always meeting people there, their own space, because if you see someone's space, you see what's important to them and
Hmm.
how they've what they've surrounded themselves with, and you can all
Yep.
begin to a conversation just based on that alone. And once you've
Hmm.
tapped someone's sincere interest, whether it's a hobby or their family or whatever else we're talking about, it's very easy to begin to open up and go forward that way.
Right.
And it
Yeah.
and people lower their barriers. Um, and I found that humor is another thing that works very well, especially if I'm in a public place. You know the drill. You're on the elevator and everyone's looking down, and no one wants to look at each other, and it's a long trip. And I don't know, I'll just think of something and I'll say, well, da 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 da, da, and people will laugh or say something, and then it breaks the ice. You see, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
or you're standing in line to get on an airplane or this or that or whatever. There's always something you can say, and just as you said, you don't know where this is going to go. You just kind of
Yeah.
what's going to happen. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Like I talked to a guy this morning and he's based in Antigua. And I was like, I've never met anybody that lives in Antigua. I said, "Well, tell me the story there." And I was like, I mean, obviously, I'd love to live on an island like that. So tell me more." And he's like, he kind of just, he's like, "Oh yeah, here's, I always, I visited it often and I always wanted to live there." And he's like, "5 years ago, I made the move." I was like, "That's awesome." And so, I mean, it just, yeah, like you said, the people's guard comes down a little bit. And I also set expectations when I reach out to someone and, let's say it's our very first conversation. I have different types of calls. I have some calls that are just like networking. I have some that are, more designed for the podcast or people that are really looking for some ideas and some strategy. Depending on the call type, I'll just say, "Hey, Larry, I have no expectations today. I'm not sure what you're hoping to achieve on our call today together. Love to hear a little bit more about the work you do. I'll give you some ideas, see where the conversation takes us. Sound good?" And you're like, "Great." They don't feel like they're going to be hard sold
no,
because nobody likes to be sold. We all like to buy, but we don't like to be sold. So yeah, it's a matter of just that initial rapport building, and it can't be forced, right? It can't be made up stuff. You have to be genuine, and you actually have to like people, right? Otherwise, don't do this. If you don't like people, if you
you're
don't like talking to strangers, don't do what I do.
hi. My name is Bill. It's like
Yeah.
who wound you up?
Right. Yeah.
Uh, um, in one way that we do, one of the things that's done in capital fundraising, and when you're trying to engage people and make them aware of the project, you would invite them to a small group meeting, usually in someone's home, usually in a nice home that somebody else wants to see the inside of, um,
Yeah.
and so that. But when they're sent, it's clear that this is going to be a presentation of the project, but it's also very clear there will be no solicitation.
Hmm.
Okay, no one's going to put me against the wall for a gift. No one's going to put me on the spot. I get to go and I can meet some people and I can learn all about what's going on and I can make up my own
Right.
judgment. as to whether I want to have any farther interest in this. And so
Yep.
that's so yeah, you want to take that off the table. And unfortunately, a lot of nonprofits do not do that. They have this, they're gonna do it now.
Timeshare presentation.
Oh,
Right.
that's the second thing you've said today. I'm going to use timeshare presentation. Oh, Adam, you're great. You're great. We may do this again, but I definitely want your the lady that does the mindset stuff. That I want to
Yep.
because
Yep.
that,
I'll make an intro.
thank you. That is probably the number one obstacle for fundraising, is they're
Yeah.
approaching this from the wrong mindset. And then the other thing that that when it comes to actual fundraising is that they have a dysfunctional view of money that really clouds what they're trying to do.
That's mindset. That's all. Yeah.
Mindset. And we have a
Yeah.
in our platform, we have a quiz, a short little exercise that measures cynicism with regard to money, and they score it themselves. And we don't publicly humiliate anyone, but they're often very surprised. You know,
Hmm.
they don't consider themselves to be a cynical person, but yeah, well, yeah, look at how you're reacting to some of these questions, and
Right.
that's going to be an obstacle for you in dealing with anyone when it comes down to money. Well,
Yep.
I won't take any more of your time, but I want to thank you very much. And I'm sure the audience will thank you as well. How would they reach you if they wanted to contact you?
Yeah, either through LinkedIn or our website's just ninjaprospecting.com. Yeah, that's the easiest way to find me. You can reach out to me there. You can message me on LinkedIn, say hey, you heard the podcast and want to have a conversation and kind of see where it goes.
Okay. All right. I think your next step should be to write a book, Adam. I'm not sure.
I have one. I did write a book, so
Oh,
it's in
okay.
yeah. So I
All
haven't published it yet, but yeah, I did write kind of a parable. Bob Berg is a I wouldn't say a friend, but I've had a number of conversations with him. He wrote The Go Giver and Endless
yes.
Referrals.
I know Bob.
And I love books that have like it's a story, but it has a message behind it, almost like an Og Mandino type of book. And so that's kind of what I created, was kind of a parable around the journey of a solopreneur kind of building their own business. And so yeah, it's written, just needs to be edited, obviously, and kind of put together and published. But yeah, that's
Well,
already in the works.
well, you let me know how that goes. I want to have you on when it goes live, when it is published. Will you
Absolutely. Yeah, would love to. Yeah.
you promise me on that?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Well, everyone, thanks so much for your time. I hope you found it as informative, as entertaining as I have. And I want to thank my guest, Adam, again for his gracious time. Next week, another person that does things. Thank you.